Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Hope you had a restful holiday season. Mine was great, saw a lot of friends and family, saw a bunch of movies, caught up on things, and something I saw, of course, was the new Avatar: The Way of Water movie. Huge movie, highly anticipated. It took over 10 years for us to get this movie. Who knew it would even happen, but we got it, and man, it was worth the wait. I've seen it twice now, and I did see it in the IMAX 3D format, which, I'll be honest, I was nervous when they handed me the glasses. I didn't know it was actually in 3D. Hadn't seen a 3D movie since the first Avatar in 2009, but it was incredible. It was totally immersive. The new technology they made, the sound, the visuals, it really felt like I was in this world, and as a movie lover, I definitely recommend you see it in the new format. It's been making a ton of money. They made enough now that the sequels have been officially approved, so apparently the third one's already done, and they're finishing 4 and 5 now that they've got the green light, so get ready for more Avatar. So that's clearly the movie theme for today's video, and the technical theme is going to be particles.js. So I'll show you how I added these interactive floating particles on this Webflow web page. Simple landing page for the Avatar movie, and you see these floating bubbles, really cool effect that you might see on some other sites. And this is all possible with the particles.js library, and it's just something you can link to your Webflow project. And yes, it involves a little bit of code, but you can copy and paste it for the most part. Don't need to be too technically savvy. Let's dive right in. So here's my basic Webflow project before I've added the particles or anything. You'll see there's a big background video that's all grayed out because obviously you can't see that unless you're in the preview mode here. So I've got this nice video background with the water and just logos, images, and this little info thing just to scroll down to make a point later that I'll talk to you about. And just the button that leads to the IMDb page. Nothing crazy, nothing too beautiful, but it's going to be about the particle. So basically how this works is that there is a big GitHub code repository, and this is a place where people can host code and everything. And big shout out to Vincent Garot for creating this library, and this is public so people can use this. That's what he intends. But this is where all the behind the scenes code is. It really works off of a canvas element, if you're familiar with that in HTML and CSS. It's kind of like a big palette where we can design and draw shapes that animate and do things. So that's where all the scary code lives. There's also the front end UI part of this, which is in this nice little standout website here. And this is sort of just the way that you can customize all that back end scary code and incorporate it into the project that you're using it for. So you'll need to incorporate both of these things into your project, right? You'll have to link to the actual big code database, and that will be using a CDN, which is a content delivery network. I made a video about one of those in the past, but that's basically just a short link that references a lot of code somewhere else, so that way your Webflow project doesn't hold all of the code, because it can't even fit it anyway. There's a code limit. And then you're just going to have to add, once you finish your customization, the styling that you have intended for your particle. Another shout out to Timothy Ricks. A lot of you might know him from the Webflow community. He's also done a video on this, and he has also put together sort of a quick code snippet that you can copy. I'm going to copy this as well. Why try to reinvent the wheel? Big shout out to him. He's awesome and great communicator with all things Webflow. So I'm just going to paste this in the home settings because I only have one page that I'm working with, right? So anytime you're working with custom code, you need to put it into your closing body tag on your page in the settings. First thing here we have is a style tag, and this is the styling for the canvas element. So you're going to be attaching this particle system to a section of your website, basically. And I'm going to attach it to just this big sort of hero section that you see here. This is just some quick styling to make sure that that canvas element will take up the whole screen and be positioned absolutely. This line here is the big link to the actual code library, that GitHub library that I pointed out to you. That is necessary so you can get all the fancy instructions behind the scenes. And then, as you'll see that Timothy has indicated here, this is the area where you will paste your customization of the big scary code. So first script is for the library, and then this next chunk of script will be for your customization. Now, this part is really important here as well. This is the ID that you will have to attach to the Webflow section that you want your particles to live in. So you'll see here in the finished product, I have the particles in this big square, the whole screen that you can see. But if I scroll down, this is, the continuation of the web page, a different chunk, and the particles are not part of this. They could be if I put everything inside the same sort of container or section, but for this, I just want them to live up here. So when you build it, you just have to make sure that this tag, whatever it says here, is an ID that is present on the section you're targeting. So I'm going to save the changes there, and I'll show you here. So this is my content div in my structure. Big background video. I just have a slight overlay to make the video a little grayer and dim it out. And then I have the content div where all this content lives, and it takes up the full width of the screen. And you know your style panel, as usual, is where you add all your styling. But then in the settings of that section, I have this ID, particles.js. So you have to add this here. Make sure you have that incorporated, because that is sort of a target for where it's going to inject these floating particles. So just make sure this matches the ID of where you want them to live. And this chunk here is where we're going to paste our customization. So when I go back to the sort of UI view of the particles.js, this whole dropdown is where you can start your customization and everything. So if you just kind of click through, you're able to add things that you want. And one of the big things is these line links. Not everyone is going to want that. So turning those off will give you, the clean particle look that we are going for. And right away, you see it already sort of has the finish effect that we like. It has the interaction with the mouse scrolling over the particles, and you can change all the things that you want. So you can go to color. I can make the particles, blue if I wanted. I can make them green, but we're going to keep them white for ours because they're just kind of look like underwater bubbles in the world of Avatar and Pandora. You can change the shape, the stroke. You can change the bubbles and make them not circles. You can make them polygons. You can make them stars. You can even make them images, which, for some projects that could be a good use. And you just have to attach the image source here, and then that would translate when you change the type to image. But, we're just working with circles for this. Size, speed, there's tons of things that you can work with. You can also change the background color here. I believe when you export it, it's transparent by default. So though it's big and red right now, it doesn't actually matter. It'll be default and blend into whatever we're working with later. So honestly, I'm just going to work with this. I don't want to change it too much. I like the speed that they're going. I like that the mouse interacts with them. I could turn that off, so when I mouse over them, they stay where they are. That's in the on-hover interaction. There's also an on-click, where you can make things happen if you click in that section of bubbles, but that's a little too much for me. I don't need that. So when you're ready with your customization, all you have to do is click download the current config, and you'll see the download appear here. And you're just going to want to open it with a code editor or a notepad, something you have that can show the code. So you'll see here, it translated all those customizations that we had into this. All I'm going to do is copy this big chunk. You don't have to understand what it's doing, just know that it's what you want. And then back in Webflow, you'll see here, this is the very kindly instructed by Timothy to paste your code here. Just paste that right in there, and this will be injected into that ID section where you had specified earlier. And when you click save, you're not going to see it because JavaScript doesn't show up here until you publish it. So I'm just going to publish this. And then in your finished site, you'll see here, it works just as we want. We've got our interaction. We've got the bubbles floating at a nice pace. It takes up the whole section that we have here. But when I scroll down, it's not part of this one because I only applied it to the top section here with the Navi and the logo. But the blue one is outside of that scope, so it's not going to have the particles. An important thing to remember, though, is the z-index of things. Because it's positioned absolutely to take on the whole screen, you might cover up certain content that needs an interaction. So just make sure that, like this button, initially when I built this out, I couldn't click it because it was underneath this layer. And as you remember, z-index is sort of layering of items. So with a higher z-index means that thing will appear on the topmost level. So if a button is behind that and has a lower z-index than the particles, I won't be able to click it. So just be conscious of that, and you can change the z-index by going to the styling and making sure it's at least positioned relatively and adjusting that here. So just make sure whatever you need on top has a higher z-index than the particles. So those are particles.js. Really easy two-step sort of process to add some life to your site. I love when the movement's there. The video background helps too. It really kind of feels like we're underwater, even this simple looking page here. Yeah, all we had to do was go to the settings of the page that you want the thing in. You're going to have to add a script tag to link to the particle.js library using the CDN. And then you have to customize the particles the way you want using the interface. And then just add all of those things here once you export that file, and you'll have all of your own customization. And this first style tag that was copy and pasted as well just targets the canvas element that is part of the big code behind the scenes and gives it some simple styling to make sure that it takes up the full screen the way we want it to. So that's particles.js, really cool library, and hopefully this gets you thinking about how other libraries are out there and how you can incorporate things with just some simple code references, and this really helps to elevate your Webflow projects. Particles.js is just one sort of library that's out there. Hope you learned something, go play around with it, add some cool customizations, and I'll see you next time.